What's going on, everybody? Here we are on a Wednesday. Super excited for some really good questions this week. There's a couple that I think that the questions that you asked this week, on a couple of cases, I really think that it's a little bit of insight into something deeper that's actually going on out there in the card hobby, card community, and I'm excited to share my thoughts on it. Now, remember, if you have a question for an upcoming episode, all you have to do is down below in the comments, simply type out your question. Also, I still have a few Captain Midlife cards available, courtesy of my friends at the Penny Sleever. Remember, if you fill out the form, the Google form in the description below, you'll also get a Mr. Penny Sleever card with the promo code MidLife, which will get you 10% off at thepennysleever.com. I think one of the things I think you'll realize when you get these cards is how nice the top loaders are and how nice the semi-rigids are and the sleeves and how clear everything is. I think that you'll like them. So consider that if you're interested. If you're not, that's fine too. Either way, check out the Penny Sleever next time you need some new replenishment of your hobby supplies. Really nice quality, really good prices. Now, when we get into these questions this week, one of the things I want you to do is I want you to be thinking about where you agree and where you disagree with me, because these are simply my opinions. And I have had my mind changed on things before. It's not going to be the first or the last time if you disagree. So if you agree or disagree, let me know what you think on these. But this first question, I'm especially interested in seeing if you all agree with me or not on where I take it. So let's take a look at that one here. Hey, Greg. With the 1933 Gaudi Babe Ruth number 144 selling in the thousands for a low grade, do you think the 32 Sinella Margarine card, which can be picked up for less than $1,000, is undervalued? Do you have an opinion on the Sinella card? My opinion is it would be a great card to add to my collection and have a plain days Babe Ruth card without breaking the bank. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and show on the screen the two cards that are mentioned. First, there are 4 Babe Ruth cards in that 33 Gaudi set. The one in particular being mentioned is this one. Now, the thing about this card is they're all popular for different reasons. They're all desirable for different reasons. This one is one of the more popular ones. To say one is the most popular, I don't know. I guess we could look at the actual sales prices, but then you're also dealing with, supply and stuff. So, they're all cool cards. I'd love to have any one of them. As far as the Sinella Margarine card, I'm going to go ahead and show that one here on the screen so you can get a look at it. And one of the things I think you'll see when you see this Sinella Margarine card is that is a beautiful image. That is an absolutely beautiful image. Now, I don't have either. I would be interested in having both. I do have a card from the Sinella Margarine set, but it's not the Ruth card. That set has a variety of different sports, and one of them is baseball. Now, why is it that Sinella Margarine card isn't more expensive when other cards in that era, in that time period, in the early 30s, like the Sinella Margarine card, it being so much cheaper than some of the other cards from that time period? Why would that be? Now, there's always going to be supply and demand. And so is it supply or is it demand? In this particular instance, I don't know. I know I would rather have the Gaudi card. So I know where I stand on the demand. But if the Gaudi card is much more valuable and is selling for more, then it either has significantly less, which isn't really the case, or it would be because the demand is much more for the Gaudi card. I actually think that this is a great example. It's something deeper going on with card collecting. I think that this is a perfect thing to point to that allows us to get some insight into something else that's going on. And the thing that I think is going on is oversized cards do not get the hobby love of traditional sized cards or smaller than traditional sized cards. You know, the Gaudi cards are a little bit smaller than your typical sized sports card. Some of the caramel cards and some of the bread cards and some of the ice cream cards, those are all a little bit smaller. And this Sinella margarine card is an oversized card. You can't put that card into a standard size slab. And for whatever reason, whether it be a good one or a bad one, people, at least from what I can tell, tend to not be as drawn toward oversized cards. Now, I think there's a lot going for oversized cards. Now, when I say oversized cards, what are some other examples besides just these Sinella cards? Well, there are a lot. There are the exhibit cards, right? A lot of exhibits that were happening in a lot of the years, 40s, 50s, were quite a few. There's a really cool autogram exhibits card that the initial production for it was actually started before his 50 Bowman card. And it's a great looking card, and you can get it for under $100. So this is a card that in some cases predates his traditionally accepted rookie card of the 50 Bowman. And it's a really cool image. I think it's a really cool image, but it's very, very affordable. A lot of other oversized things, like some of the Gaudi premiums and some of the other premiums that are out there. The red band cards from the 50s. Those cards I think those cards are absolutely gorgeous. The colors on them are gorgeous. If you wanted to start a vintage collection and you were looking for something a little bit off the beaten trail, not Bowman, not Topps, and you wanted cool looking cards where you get a lot of bang for your buck, where your dollar goes much further, because for whatever reason, they're cheaper. And the reason kind of has to be lower demand. Because if you go into any card show, you're going to see a lot of cards from the 50s. But you may not see a ton of cards that are Redman cards. So if they're harder to come by, but they're less expensive, that there has to be a significantly lower demand. And that's what I think is happening with a lot of cards, including this Sinella card, is I think that a lot of people aren't really that interested in oversized cards. Now, is it because they're not standard size? They take up more space. They don't fit in the cases or the boxes where you keep your other cards. It's probably a little of all of that. It's probably a little bit all of it. I don't know. We could poll people and I could throw that out there and ask. But I just think that when we think of a baseball card, we think of this smaller item. And the things that are bigger than that, people kind of lump into more like photographs. And they're harder to display on a shelf. They're harder to display in a case. They're harder to store with the rest of your collection. So what does that mean? Does that mean we should just avoid them? Well, if you like them, I think it's a buying opportunity. If there's something that in a lot of cases is rarer than a traditional card, and it's less expensive than a traditional card, and you really like them as much or more than a traditional size card, then isn't that sort of the definition of a buying opportunity? You could go out and buy a lot of those Redman cards, and you could buy them for a lot less. Now, in high grade, maybe not. With the tabs still attached in high grade, maybe not. But in a lot of cases, when you compare them to, if you look at the 52 Redmans compared to the 52 Topps counterparts, in a lot of cases, and I don't want to say all because I'm sure there are outliers, the Redman card is going to be cheaper. The exhibit card is going to be cheaper. The Sinella card is going to be cheaper. And again, the only thing I can come up with is I think that it's because it's an oversized card. And for whatever reason, people aren't as drawn to oversized cards. So my response to this is it, what are my, I mean, the question was kind of like, what are my thoughts and why is this? And I think that my thoughts are, if you like them, then they're cheaper. They're cheaper. If they're cheaper. Now, if you're doing it for an investment, well, the reason that they're cheaper is because there's lower demand. Will that demand change at some point? Maybe. But if that demand has been much lower for years and years and years, I don't see why it would suddenly change now. So I don't know if it's a better quote unquote investment, but most of us that are watching this right now consider us to be at least the majority of the reason we're doing this, the overwhelming majority of the reason why we're doing this is because we collect them and we like them and they're artifacts that give us nostalgia and bring us joy and it's fun. And then if you like these Gaudy premiums, if you like these Sinella cards, if you like these Redman cards and they're cheaper and in a lot of cases they're rarer, well then yeah, I think that's a buying opportunity for you to add some really cool stuff to your collection. So you guys tell me, I'm really interested on this one. Why are oversized cards usually, not always, but usually quite a bit less expensive? Let me know what you think.
Great video, Greg. While watching, a thought came to mind. Do you ever find yourself not buying a card because you think you want something else more? Then you don't end up buying anything and your wish list never gets smaller. Just a random thought.
This is a fantastic question because to me it's one of the hardest parts of the hobby. It's one of the hardest decisions is deciding, what do I buy next? Do I buy this card now? Or do I wait and buy it later? Do I buy this example in this opportunity? Or do I continue to wait because this other thing I want more? And a lot of us that are impatient, we end up just buying what's in front of us. Some of us that are patient, we end up saving and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and we miss all these other opportunities while we're saving up for the perfect example and the perfect copy of this other thing that we want. So my answer to this is yes, I absolutely find myself not buying cards because there's another card that I want more. And I also find myself buying cards that I don't want as much because the opportunity just presented itself. One of the things I deal with all the time is I'm like, man, I really don't want to buy this right now. But this might be the opportunity for this one, right? This might be the chance to get this card. If I don't get this one now because I'm waiting for this other thing, then I might miss my opportunity for this. I end up getting the other thing, and now I have to wait and wait and wait for this to present itself again. And that's one of the hard parts about vintage. One of the hard parts about vintage is not every copy do we like the looks of. You know, if it's a rarer card, if it's a scarce card, if whatever term you want to use, if it's a card that doesn't show up every day in the condition and the price range that works for you, then when the opportunity presents itself, sometimes I feel like I don't really want to buy this one right now. But if I don't buy this one right now, it might be 2 years until I get this opportunity again. So I think I kind of got to do it. And that's one of the reasons why I have such a hard time saving up for big cards. I consider myself to be pretty I'm not a patient person, but I do find myself to be a fairly patient collector. I don't buy cards that I don't like the looks of just because that's the only one available right now. I've got so many logs on the fire. I've got so many burners going at the same time of things that I want, that when one of the things that I want shows up in the price range and the condition that I want, there's usually something out there for me to go after. And those things that you've been maybe had your eye out for a couple of years. For a couple of years, you've been like, I'd like to get this, 52 tops Duke Snyder card. If I find one that's really centered with good color, I'd like to have, and you've been looking for it for 2 years, and now you're currently saving because you've decided you want to get the Stan Musial rookie card. And you're not really focused on anything except for saving for the Stan Musial rookie card. And then boom, you go to a show or you look online, and that copy of the Duke Snyder in the great centering and the great color and the great eye appeal is now available. Do you turn away from it because you're set on the Stan Musial, or do you take a little bit of a setback for that bigger card because finally, after looking for a long time, this other card presented itself? To me, that's one of the hardest things. I've said many times, to me, the hardest part of the hobby is two things. Number one, what do you buy next? What do you buy next? Do you buy that card, or do you wait because you're saving for the other card? Do you pass on it even though it's available now? The thing we're talking about right now, that's one of the hard parts. The other hard part is, do I want a lot of cool stuff or just a few really, really special things, more expensive things, right? Quality or quantity. Those are the two hardest parts of the hobby. And there's not a right answer for either. There's a lot of people out there who have really high quality and not a lot of volume. And there are other people who have a ton of volume, but it's not super expensive stuff. And most of us fall somewhere in between. And wherever you fall is not right or wrong. It's just where you fall. And this question, to me, it's one of the reasons why, my buddy Darren of Return to Collecting, I used to say all the time, bro, I can't save up money because as soon as I start to save up some money, something comes up and I just end up buying it. And he said, that's why you need a second account. You need your card account, and then you need like a card savings account. That's your Grail account. That's your big card account. And so you put some of your money in the big card account, and whenever you get your regular card account to a certain amount, any money that comes in above that goes into the big card account. And then you always have this other money that you give yourself permission if something else shows up. And that was great advice that he gave me about a year ago on that. And I've been okay at following it. I've been okay at following that advice. Sometimes I'm better than others. There are some cards this past weekend that came up for sale that I wanted. And I'm like, which one do I bid on? Or do I bid on any of them? And what did I end up doing? I stayed disciplined, and I bid up to my limit on what I was willing to pay. And then when several of them went above that limit, I said, that really stinks, because it might be a while until a nice copy comes up again, but I'm not going to overpay simply because it's available right now. I'm sticking to my limit. This is a brutally tough question. And I'll continue to ask almost every time somebody comes on my channel. And I've got an interview that I recently recorded that I'll be airing later in the week. And one of the questions is, how do you decide what you're going to buy next? Almost everyone I talk to, I ask that question because I think it's a really tough question.
Hey, Greg, you had a really great year when it comes to your card collection. And it's great you have made friendships over the past year from having your YouTube channel. However, my question is, what would you say is the greatest obstacle you've had to overcome or are still working on to overcome? What would your advice or words of wisdom be to people who are also struggling, and maybe a favorite quote that holds special meaning to you and has helped you get through some dark times? Thanks, Greg.
Man, this is a really brutally tough question, and my friend Andrew, friend of the community, Andrew, asks a tough one here, and I know you've had some things, Andrew, happen with important people in your life that have been difficult, and I'm sorry, and it sucks. And I know that, we all have times where there's a lot of, it feels like everything's going right. And there are other times where it feels like everything's going wrong. And I have some other friends who I know are going to be watching this that are going through some tough times. And those people who are hearing this, and they say, I think he's talking about me. I'm talking about you. And it's really tough. It's really tough to power through those times. It's really tough. So part of the difficult aspect of this question is I'm kind of an open book. The way that I kind of live is I don't really have many secrets. The things that I don't talk about are generally because there are other people that might not want me to talk about certain things. But as far as myself in general, I'm kind of an open book. Now, I'm not 100% sure if you're asking me about struggles and difficulties with cards, or if you're talking about and the hobby, or if you're talking about struggles and difficulties in life. So I don't know exactly how to answer this. Some of the difficult things that I personally have had to overcome, I think that I deal with I deal with some anxiety and depression, like a lot of people do. I think that I deal with worry. There are people in this world who don't worry about tomorrow. And those people really enjoy today. And then there are other people who are so worried about tomorrow that they don't enjoy today. And if you're so worried about tomorrow, you may not enjoy today, but tomorrow is going to be there are going to be less surprises for you. The people who are focused on planning, they may not get as much joy out of each day of their life. But the surprises aren't going to derail you because you're planned for it. There's like half glass full, half glass empty. I'm a person who plans for the worst, expects the worst, but hopes for the best. And a lot of the time, the worst doesn't happen, and I'm planned for it. And so it's fine. Everything works out just fine. I have 2 kids. One of my daughters, she saves every dollar. She doesn't spend her money. She's worried about what's going to happen in 5 years. And every day is controlled by what might happen in 5 years. And then I have another who she has fun today. And tomorrow's problems will be taken care of tomorrow. there's not a right way or a wrong way, and I think that there is probably some sort of balance in between there that is probably best. And this also goes, this is not just in life, but I think the same thing holds true with cards. You know, um, there are certain immediate gratification things that, are possible in the hobby. And then it's like the guy who buys into a break and the guy who buys packs to rip versus the guy who buys singles. As a kid, I didn't buy a ton of packs because I knew I wasn't going to get anything. But I bought the singles. I'm like, why am I going to spend $50 on a box of this when I could spend $60 on the one card that I really want? I'll just spend $60 and get the one card that I really want. Not a super exciting style. My grandpa, one of my favorite people ever, we would go to Baskin Robbins, right? An ice cream place that had, 30, 40 flavors, right? And he would get a scoop of vanilla. And I would say, well, don't you want to try one of these other flavors? And he's like, why? I like vanilla. This is great. This is a good flavor. I don't need to try anything else. I know I like this one. That's kind of playing it safe, right? So whether it be in the hobby and you're a person who wants to save up for one particular card, you buy that one particular card, you don't take many risks, you don't try to buy this and move into that and flip this and rip that. I don't think that there's a right way or a wrong way. But I do think that there is advice and there are things that we all can remember. One thing I would say that we all need to remember is that the sun shines on the righteous and the unrighteous, and the rain pours on the righteous and the unrighteous. Sometimes good things happen to bad people, and sometimes good things happen to good people. And sometimes bad things happen to good people, and sometimes bad things happen to bad people. And at the end of the day, our collection is supposed to be something that brings us joy. And our collection is supposed to be something that we have fun and camaraderie and we build friendships from. And that is the part to focus on the most. I have learned that ripping packs does not result in positive situations for me. So I stay away from it. Instead, I take a more conservative approach. I don't know if I've answered your question, and I could get much deeper. I could get, and people are saying, really? Yeah, I could. I've had in the last 3 or 4 years some health issues that have taken me to some dark places. And I've had some worry that has taken me to some dark places. And those things at times were intertwined. And I've also had some of the best memories of my life in the last 3 or 4 years. Whether it be new friends that I've made, whether it be watching my kids or my wife excel at something and have just crazy amounts of joy, whether it be sharing memories of fun times with my mom or with my dad or with my kids or with my wife or with some friends. There's going to be good days. There's going to be bad days. The sun is going to shine and the rain is going to pour. And the next day, it might be the opposite. So if the rain is pouring right now, just hang in there because the sun is going to come soon. And when it does, it's going to feel great. So regardless of what any of us are going through, just remember, it will not last. Good times are right around the corner. And I have to remind myself of that as much as anything because it's a struggle at times. And that's what friends and family are for, is to help us get through those rough times and then also to share those good times.
Question for next week. As a vintage collector, what are your thoughts about on card autos' effect on future value? I do a lot of TTM, and I've been getting living Hall of Fame autos on early 1970s tops basketball and football. I slab for authentication and long-term protection.
All right. I like this question, and one of the reasons I like it is what what autographs on cards do for me. And I'm not going to pretend to speak for everyone, but it takes kind of just a run-of-the-mill, regular old card, and it makes it unique, and it makes it special, and it makes it different, and it makes it rarer. So I like TTM autographs too. I like sending stuff off. If you haven't been doing it, man, when you go to the mailbox, it's like Christmas morning. You're like, come on, son, be in there today. It is so much fun when you get a return. And my thought is that these athletes, if they didn't want to do it, they would stop doing it. So if they're signing, it means they don't mind it. That's my thought. But you can take a card that's just a basic old card that you can find at any card show, at any card shop, and you can make it special. You could do something to that card that makes that card unique and extra cool. And that's what I love about it. That's why I love getting cards autographed. So I thought I'd grab some of mine. So here's just a regular old 1970 Topps Juan Marichal. But I sent it to Juan Marichal and got it signed. And now it's not just a regular old card. It's an awesome autographed card. He still signs through the mail. How about this card? There are thousands and thousands Mike Mussina score first draft pick cards out there. But what about one that's autographed and it says Hall of Fame 19? How much cooler is that? How much cooler is a Ron Guidry rookie card when it's autographed? How many of these could I go onto eBay right now? I could go on right now and find so many Ron Guidry rookie cards. And some are signed, but this one was signed and mailed back to me. Or a Dennis Eckersley rookie card. I bought this card in a bargain box for like $8. And now it's a Hall of Fame autograph. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Or Wade Boggs. Prolific TTMer. I've had this card. This card was in my childhood collection. I've had this card, this exact copy of this card, I've had in my collection since I was 10. No, 12? Probably 12. And now I'm 45 and I've got the same card, but it was signed by Wade Boggs or Ryan Sandberg or Eric Dickerson. I mean, as a kid, this card, this Eric Dickerson card, was a big rookie card. And now there are thousands and thousands and thousands of them in circulation, but this one is signed. And I sent it to him and he sent it back. It takes just an average card and it makes it special. And that is what I love about getting cards autographed. So I have some cards not autographed and I have some cards that are. But I like doing TTMs and I like sending cards to get autographed because it takes something that's not unique and it makes it kind of unique. And to me, that makes it a little bit more special. And it adds a story to it. And what I continue to say is, the cool thing about cards is it's not just the piece of cardboard with a picture on it. It's the story attached to it. And now the Eric Dickerson autograph has the story of me buying the card, mailing it to him, getting it back in the mail, and now it's autographed. It just adds so much to the joy of having it for me. That's my thought.
Love your videos, Greg. Thank you. Ever regret not pulling the trigger on a purchase or purchases? I've had quite a few in the last decade, two which still haunt me.
I think this question kind of goes back to a question I answered earlier about, you know, not buying one card or buying one card and then not being able to buy a different card. They kind of go hand in hand. I think there's a lot of crossover with this. But, you know, this whole thing is sort of this economic term, right, of opportunity cost. Like, we have so many resources and we can use them here or we can use them here. And what we do sometimes is we just haunt ourselves and saying, oh my gosh, I should have bought this card. Because had I bought this card over here, then I would have it and it's done this value, or I can't find one like it now. And we just beat ourselves up. And we say, I should have pulled the trigger. I didn't pull the trigger. Do you ever feel that way? And I think that we all have a couple of stories where we go, I should have done it. But when we do that, we have to also take a step back and look at what we did do instead. I could talk about a couple of cards at this year's National that, man, that was a sweet card. I probably should have bought it. It was a great price. It was a great condition. The card just had this great color, and I could remember all of that. But then that means something else that I bought I wouldn't have been able to buy. So when I look at the opportunity that I passed on, I have to also consider, if I hadn't passed on it and I pulled the trigger on it, then that means that I wouldn't have been able to pull the trigger on this thing, and I wouldn't have had that. So we can't just look back at all of the things we didn't buy, but could have bought, without also considering, had I bought that, then I wouldn't have this, right? We have to always, any of us can say, man, I wish I could go back 10 years. I should have bought 4 houses. True, those houses have gone up, but what about what we did with the money instead? Instead, maybe I kept it in the bank and that provided me some security that made me sleep better at night. Or maybe I left it in the stock market and that money in the stock market has done pretty well. And by having it in the stock market, not only did that go up, but also I knew it was a little bit more liquid than in this real estate. And if I had bought it, then I would have had to deal these houses. I would have had to have all these rentals, and all those rentals could have caused headaches. And if I had bought all those extra houses and I had all these rentals, maybe the renter would have not paid and then they would have burned it down. We don't know what else would have happened. So we can't just haunt ourselves with a couple of the negative things without also considering what we maybe got as a result of not pulling the trigger. We have to be fair with ourselves. We all have those stories, but we don't know exactly how things would have played out had things gone a different direction. So take it easy on ourselves. Give ourselves some grace, and remember that there's more to it than simply what we sometimes make of it. That's my suggestion. Great questions this week. Great thoughts. Super curious to hear your responses to some of my thoughts. And remember, again, if you have questions that you'd like to hear my thoughts on, all you have to do is type that question in the comments below. And I look forward to seeing what those are.